Catholic leaders in the West.
Okay, you said he converted to Orthodox.
I know it does say that, but he actually, he was Orthodox, but then he became closer with the Pope. And over time, the Merovingian dynasty, which was his dynasty, became more and more close to the Roman Catholic Church.
So he didn't become
Well,
Orthodox?
and also, at this time, was there necessarily a split? No, because when did the real split happen between?
Like 1053? 54.
1054.
I know it's 10 something
Thank
four.
you. Yeah, 1053. Good. So the Merovingian dynasty was created by Clovis. And it was a Christian dynasty. And as you can see, there was definitely troubles with succession after Clovis died, something we've seen again and again and again. And because Clovis had been a strong ruler, his sons were not very strong rulers, they ended up giving more and more power to another family that was sort of second in command. And the title of this post was called the Mayor of the Palace.
Wait, who was the mayor of the palace?
It was this family called the Carolingians. And the mayor of the palace was a position in the Merovingian, and I know it's difficult because one's Merovingian and these are the Carolingians. You can think Carol, it's named after Charles.
And that was the...
That's the mayor of the palace. And the mayor of the palace was really the person who ran the government on a day-to-day basis because Clovis's sons were not very effective rulers. So they needed somebody to sort of take over all of the day-to-day information and, I guess, running of a government and a kingdom. So the Carolingians,
What is the NG
what's that? That's, I mean, like approximate dates, basically.
And they were the second highest one in the kingdom.
Yeah, they were sort of the people who were second in command officially, but in reality, they ran things. Does that make sense? It's like they have a figurehead. You know, it's like in England today, right? You have the king or you have the queen, but the queen doesn't necessarily run the government, right? Who does? Prime Minister. It's kind of that setup, right? You have the mayor of the palace are the people who are really in charge of how the kingdom works. The
Is it
important,
just him or is it like his family?
it's an inherited title. So, and that's why it's a Carolingian, because it's actually passed from father to son, just like the kingship is passed from father to son. So it's inherited. And one of the most important Carolingians is Charles Martel. Charles Martel was important for a couple of reasons. One, I'll come back to that.
Oh.
Okay. One is that he defeats, because eventually the Muslims make inroads through Spain, through the Visigothic kingdom, and they try eventually to attack the Frankish kingdom. But Charles Martel successfully defeats them. Even though he's not king, remember, he's still the mayor of the palace. He defeats them at the Battle of Tours.
Who's that?
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
What's that?
We talked about that. The battle tours.
Oh, you did with Miss Atwell? Perfect.
Well, we didn't like talk about it, so you said that like it existed basically.
Okay. It did exist. And Charles Martel, now you know that Charles Martel kept, the Muslims from invading in the east.
They were Spanish.
Wait,
They're
so
from the west.
they tried to attack Gaul by
this is a better example, right? And because remember how we talked, one of the legacies of the Byzantine Empire was to be a bulwark from the Muslim Empire in the east. Because Charles Martel defeated the Muslims in the west, that line was drawn there. Because the Muslims the Muslim empires started in the Far East, and then as they went west, they had a strong presence in Spain, and then tried to attack from across the Pyrenees. Does that make sense? But because Charles Martel was able to repel them, we get the West again developing on its own. Yes, Anya?
Why is the spread of Islam so bad?
What's that?
Why is the spread of Islam into like...
Oh no, it's not bad. No, not bad at all. Because it's more that this is why Europe developed independently of the Byzantine Empire and of the Islamic Empire. We're actually going to study the Islamic Empire next unit. Sorry if I gave you the impression. Why did you get the
Because
impression?
it was bulwark. It's like, it's as if it's a
Oh,
wall.
okay, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Like,
We
it
will
was-
look at our Western-centric history. It's a very good point. Because going back to that idea of the Dark Ages, which you covered a lot with Miss Atwell, right? Yeah? A little bit. You talked about what it meant to be the Dark Ages?
Yeah.
Right, because the Dark Ages were supposed to be when learning went away and when,
It was like cultural regression.
when there's a cultural regression. Really, all of the sort of culture and learning that started in Greece and then transitioned to Rome really went to both the Byzantine Empire, but even more so to the Islamic empires. So no, it's just, this is more why Europe developed separately from the Byzantine Empire and why it developed separately from the Muslim Empire and this region of the world. Does that make sense? A little more sense? Okay. So Charles Martel becomes more important, and because of his success on the battlefield, his son, Pepin III, becomes king. So he's no longer mayor of the palace, he becomes king of the Franks. And the biggest thing that he does is he cuts a deal with the Pope.
Wait, is Pepin the Third or Pepin the Short?
Both.
Was he short?
How does
Yes.
he become king?
Well, he's Charles Martel's son, and because Charles Martel had become more powerful, his son becomes.
But how come Charles Martel doesn't stay king? He's probably too old.
Well, he was out there battling and moving. He wasn't able to take power because of. Part of it was because he was old.
So he became king and his son became king.
No, his son became king.
So
So
then did it come the Charlotte?
then it was a Carolingian dynasty. Yes.
So there's no more mayor of the palace now?
No more mayor of the palace. Well,
Was
that.
there king before?
What's that?
Like, was there king before? Like, who was
Yeah, the Merovingians were the kings. So Pepin is important because he makes a deal with the Pope because of. Let's see if they're in here. They're not. The Lombards were a group of Germanic tribes people who were threatening Rome. And Pepin comes in and saves Rome, defeats the Lombards, and in return, Pepin has the donation of Pepin, which is this slice of land across the Italian peninsula right here, that he gives to the Pope and says, you are supreme leader, not only spiritually, but temporally. You are the